Hello. Today I'm going to be talking about Valve's game Portal and why making a third game would be very difficult. You see, Portal 1 is a short experimental game that was shipped as a bonus game in the orange box where Half-Life 2 and Team Fortress 2 were the main games. However, the game was so popular, Valve decided to carry on with their eventual vision for the game and created Portal 2. But the keyword here is that Valve had an eventual vision for Portal. You see, Valve games are some of the most original ideas for games in the entire game world. This is evidently very important for Valve as all their games are totally different from each other. But what we need to notice is that when Valve makes a sequel, on the one hand you're playing a continuation of the original game. On the other hand, Valve still wants to introduce entirely new concepts to that sequel. Half-Life was a great game. What happens if you take that, add even more multitasking, more personality to the characters, newer game technology and storytelling? That's why making Half-Life 3 is so hard. Valve doesn't want to just make a newer Half-Life 2, they want something very different from the previous game. You don't want a bad Half-Life 3 game, you don't want an unoriginal Half-Life 3 game. You don't want Half-Life 3 to become a money maker with nothing new added to it like so many AAA companies do. The same applies to Portal. Portal 1 introduced us to the portal puzzle concept. You have a gun that shoots two portals and you need to find the exit to the chamber or open it. The game also has various objects and mechanics in the chambers as part of the puzzle. Things like conservation of momentum between portals and other things that are now considered very simple concepts to the veteran Portal player. I don't know if anyone noticed this, but Portal 1 only has two types of input/output puzzle elements, cubes and buttons, and the high energy pellet. That's all they have. The lifts are merely obstacles that are very common in many games. Although Portal is a good game, Portal 1's puzzles have not aged well. There wasn't much to work with, and the pioneering developers wouldn't know any better about how puzzles in Portal are easily glitchable or can potentially get people stuck. I know the commentary says things about encouraging the player to think for themselves, but that concept is now overused in the Portal retail game. You can't make puzzles now that just allow the player to skip the entire thing. As a result of the lack of testing elements and the simplicity of the Portal game, which is okay for the game itself, but for custom Portal 1 maps, they didn't have much to work with either. The Portal mappers at the time, as a result of that, Portal mappers at the time had this idea that the harder the map, the better quality it is. This can be seen very clearly in Portal Prelude, Blue Portals, and some other Portal 1 mods and maps. The decent Portal 1 mods and maps out there from before Portal 2 was released are either too hard or have what would be considered very boring nowadays. Many of them were either mazes or basic cube and button puzzles where the only challenges are opening the right doors to get other cubes and doing obvious tasks with the cubes and high energy pellet, and occasionally the difficulty of execution was increased, which is not a good way of making a puzzle. There are few Portal mods out there that actually challenge the player to think rather than doing something properly when the solution is obvious by punishing the player when they don't do it properly. Portal 2 changed this. Portal 2 added an abundance of new testing elements. That was something that wasn't really done that often in Portal 1 before Portal 2 was announced. As a result, the quality of the puzzles improved in Portal 2, and instead of being execution based, they were based on logical thinking and actual problem solving. When Portal 2 was announced and some of the content was previewed, many Portal 1 mods that came out at the time added their own new testing elements like blue portals. However, the puzzles were still sometimes too frustrating for people to solve. However, when Portal 2 was actually released, the idea of what a good puzzle was changed, and the Portal 2 maps and mods changed accordingly, at least most of the time. Portal 2 was a great game that changed the game of Portal forever. However, it was released in 2011, which is a long time ago. So the question is, where's Portal 3? Alright, so Portal 1 introduced the game, Portal 2 added to it and changed the way you play. What's Portal 3 going to introduce? Like, more testing elements? You could just as well make a custom map or mod with new testing elements, and many mappers have done so already, including myself. You're not introducing something too revolutionary if that's what Portal 3 is going to be. The closest thing to Portal 3 right now is Portal Reloaded, because what the creator did there with time portals totally changed the way you play Portal. Time travel has always been a gimmick in many Portal 2 maps. However, most of them were static world portals that all they really did was change the way the same room looked. It was a fun way of making another similar room to an existing one without making it look like as if by making it look like you were just in the same room the entire time. Portal Reloaded is different. First, the time portal is actually shot from the portal gun. You can use this portal any way you like. You can use the same concepts of momentum and other things that you use in the regular portals, in the space portals. But another important thing is that what you do in the past has an effect on the future. That includes duplicate objects and portals in the future that you can utilize for your puzzles. Just think about it, you have two pairs of space portals and a pair of time portals. If you know how to control their behavior, you can make some amazing puzzles, and Portal Reloaded is built on that. It's one of the highest rated games on Steam, just like retail Portal 2. But the mod is very short and probably wouldn't be accepted as canon by Valve. But my main point is this: the distance between Portal 3 and Portal 2 should be the same distance between Portal 1 and Portal 2. You need a fundamental change that was never done before. You don't just want to make something that could have just as well been done in Portal 2 as well. Figuring out how to do that in Portal 3 is very difficult. That's why, let's say, Half-Life 3 isn't made yet, or for that matter, why Half-Life Alyx wasn't made sooner. Half-Life Alyx has a decent plot, a much better alternative to Episode 3, which would have made the mistake of undermining the cliffhanger in Half-Life 2 Episode 2, and would also make another Half-Life 2 game after we've had already 3 Half-Life 2 games. But that's not the main thing Half-Life Alyx did. It introduced us into proper VR gaming for the first time. Gaming that wasn't just a fun game with bows and arrows, but a full game with realistic interactions and huge attention to small details. This was also a concept taken from another VR game, Boneworks. But Half-Life Alyx and Boneworks are the true pioneers of demonstrating what can be done in VR. Half-Life 3 obviously won't be in VR because they obviously want Half-Life 3 to be accessible to regular PC players, so that's why they went with the Half-Life Alyx story. However, you still want to introduce a new concept to Half-Life 3 after all the Half-Life games that were made. And how would you do the same in Portal 3 or Team Fortress 3? But until we get that, Valve won't be able to counter 3. And to be honest, I wouldn't force them. I want a good Portal 3 game. I want a good Half-Life 3 game. I want a good Left 4 Dead 3 or Team Fortress 3. The closest thing Valve almost made but was cancelled due to Source 2 not being ready is Left 4 Dead 3, which was supposed to be a class-based zombie shooter, where each survivor had a different role, kind of like Team Fortress 2 in Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead 2 is different from Left 4 Dead 1, but it was too similar to the extent that people almost boycotted the game because they were afraid it was just a better Left 4 Dead 1 released less than a year later. And Left 4 Dead 2 now has all the Left 4 Dead 1 campaigns in it with the Left 4 Dead 2 in-game additions. Left 4 Dead 1 survived and is doing relatively well, but that's just an example of what I'm afraid of might not happen and what Valve wants to avoid. Valve doesn't want to make just a newer version of the same game, and I don't want them to either.